I'm Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. This is where I'm sharing my experiences in SEO, both as an SEO and an SEO tester. The purpose behind this podcast is to bring SEOs together with the businesses that they serve, and in doing so, create a more balance of power between them. Yes, the business writes the checks, but the investment is in their business. And the SEO learns how to get things to rank through the science of how Google works. And to do that means an investment on our part because, frankly, Google keeps their cards close to their chest. So if you're an independent or agency SEO, I definitely get you. Business owners and stakeholders, I was a local business owner of a CD and DVD duplication studio for a long time. And I understand, trying to understand better. And often the only tools we knew were micromanaging and cost estimates. So my advice is stay receptive, and no matter how smart you are, you're not an SEO. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 21 of Confessions of an SEO, Mountain Edition 2023. So today's topic is probably more for the SEO than the business owner, but if you're getting pitched on this, you might want to have some insight. So right here, right now, in the next 30 seconds, you're going to hear everything that is known about the Google Helpful Content System. This became a thing last August, so we're almost a full year in. So are you ready? Here goes. Okay, yeah, I hope you like my joke. Well, despite what you see online, despite what you're told, despite the latest book, anything or sadly anyone that even pretends to know what the helpful content is targeting, based on what Google says, I think Shakespeare may have called it centuries ago, and I'm going to quote him. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. And I know you're like, whoa, Carolyn, you can't say that. Google told us about it. It's a thing. So to be fair and to let you know that I hear you, let's do a quick recap. Last August, Google announced through surrogates, mind you, that they were going to roll out the helpful content update. No one knew what that was. Now, I'm going to post the URLs in the description of this episode. There were 2 articles on SE Roundtable and one I'm going to talk about from Google developer documents. Now, I'm going to paraphrase some and quote some, but it's just for the purpose of establishing what we do know and what we don't know about the helpful content. Now, I want to shoot some of that hope right out of the skies so we all start out at the same time, out of the same gate. So here's what we know. It does involve the entire site. Sounds scary and sounds an awful lot like Panda from 2011 and 2012. And I'm going to quote what they say. It will target content that seems to have been primarily created for ranking well in search engines. So that also sounds scary because we all want our content to rank well, and goes on. And any content, not just helpful content, on sites determined to have relatively high amounts of unhelpful content overall, that content is less likely to perform well in search, assuming that there is other content elsewhere from the web that's better for them to display. For this reason, removing unhelpful content could help the rankings of your other content. In short, I interpret this as be afraid. Be very afraid. Now, I'm just saying I'm playing with you, right? I don't think you should be afraid. Now, they also have said that there is no score involved in the helpful content rollouts. And to quote John Mueller, he is Google's search spokesperson, there is no score or threshold for the Google Helpful Content Update. And not to outdo himself in confusing everybody, he says, you should ask yourself, does this, the content that you want to add, does this make the site more helpful? I would go through the questions in our documentation, and if you're unsure, find a way to ask folks objectively some of the questions. In review, this is a site-wide update, and if you're going to rank well, I should say if you're trying to rank well in search engines, and who amongst us doesn't want that, or if you have too much content like this, whatever this is, you might want to remove it and go back and read our documentation and do better. Have a nice day. There are literally no provided examples. As I like to say, nothing to see here, but it could impact your whole site. So what else do we know? Google is a technology company. Software, computational power, impressive for sure, but they are not omniscient. So they can't just do something. They have to program to have it do something. Not to mention, in a world where one person's garbage is another person's treasure, how would Google even measure unhelpful content? And about this signal, what is so new and special about it that it isn't already handled in the algorithm? Many of you know my specialty is forensic SEO. I really love this process. And I'm going to tell you a little story. Years ago, I knew an early music historian and lute player, Robert Spencer. Very famous player. He taught at the Royal College of Music. Was a great teacher, and he happened to, in his early career, discover previously undiscovered Dowland manuscripts, other musicians as well from the same period. Now, Robert Dowland was a lutenist active between Elizabeth I and James I, so it was like late 1500s to early 1600s. He was a prolific Renaissance lute composer. Anyway, Bob, who was originally trained as a librarian, would go to various towns and small villages where there was some evidence that either Dowland had lived or some of his known associates. And he would go into that town and look in the phone book to find people who had the same last name as who he was looking up. And he would call them to see if they had any chests of music manuscripts in their attics. Pretty cool, huh? He was a gumshoe musicologist. So taking a page out of his book, so to speak, I went back and looked at the Google documentation to get an idea if there were any clues in there to discover, were there any hints in that documentation? How does all this go? You know, and it's a lot easier these days to track these things down and have to go to different little towns. So anyway, the URL, I'm going to put this in the description, but it's basically where they talk about their updates and specifically the helpful content update. And they used an interesting phrase on the page, how the helpful content system works. Okay, so it would seem that there is a system, and they tell us on that page it is entirely automated. Okay, so that also tells me that it's programmed, it's software. Hence, it must be something measurable. Now, on the surface, I'm going to totally call BS on what they say it does, what it does. You know, they say the helpful content system aims to better reward content where visitors feel that they've had a satisfying experience, while content that doesn't meet a visitor's expectations won't perform as well. All right. This is where I think they go all word salad on us. But how do they measure visitors' expectations? And I know some of you have actually tried to do this in your minds now that I've challenged you. So let's put a pin in this because I'll come back to it. And I almost can't go on any further on this because I can hear you guys thinking, hey, Carolyn, spare me the birth pains and just give me the baby. Thing is, I come from the old school of citations and background before jumping right into something. And at the same time, we're all so trained for instant gratification. I want the Reader's Digest version now. So ultimately, I have to let you know I'm leading us back to the indexation research project. So just when you thought you were out, I welcome you to listen to the Crawl or No Crawl report on the helpful content system that was published on June 24th. I'll put the link in the description so you have it. In it, I bring some evidence. Pay attention now, that the helpful content system may be a fancy way to describe that they found a way to determine if your new content is topically relevant to what is already on your site. Boom. So I'm thinking this puts and I've said this many, many times, when we say Google ranks pages, not websites. the data that's coming in is kind of putting that on its ear, sort of. So let's go back to that concept of visitor expectations. Remember, that figures prominently in their documentation. So if content does not meet visitor expectations, what if we change that to if the content does not meet visitors' topical expectations? So for instance, you have a site on the royal family and you throw in content on leatherback sea turtles population on the Atlantic coast. Well, probably you will have trouble getting that page indexed. I should say served. Now, one piece of content isn't going to sink the site. But to me, and this is where I'm focusing, okay? The new part here is that if your content is off topic or maybe introduces a degree of topical confusion, evidence is mounting that you will have indexation system issues, specifically issues with the served subsystem. It may show as indexed in Search Console, but the pages aren't being served or findable by their keywords. So why focus on topical? Well, first, data. I have multiple tests where on theme sites, new content that is off topic is not getting served. In the June 24th Crawl or No Crawl report, I mentioned the words, it's called a classifier process, which appears also in that Google documentation. And it's kind of like I'm thinking classifier. Well, you could classify all the pages in your website as being on a certain topic, right? So that's kind of what got me thinking that it had to be topical between the data and the idea of it being a classifier, because what could be more helpful to searchers who return to websites than a cohesive topical content on that site? So to quote Google, the classifier process is entirely automated using a machine learning model, and it works across all languages. Periodically, we refine how the classifier detects unhelpful content. And then when we do this in a notable way, we share that this is now a helpful content update on our Google Search Ranking Updates page. So a reasonable person can interpret that as it's a classifier that's tuned for topical, and in their words, helpful content. This system runs all the time. And when they tighten or loosen those tolerance knobs, that's what they call a notable way, that they're going to announce that that's an update. Now, recently, there's been a lot of volatility up and down, and I suspect that some of it may be related to the helpful content. But I want to look at what are reasons why pages won't get served. And I would say, they're kind of like in a larger category. They would be, more on-page related. So I break it down into like one, either it's not optimized enough or there's not enough authority, aka backlinks, for inclusion in the curated top 100 or 200 of the search results. So in other words, your content hasn't paid the cost of admission for that term. Let's think about trying to rank for the term shoes. All right. Next one is maybe in the course of continuing to edit and optimize your page, you've tripped a possible MC4 tripwire algorithm. Now, if you don't know what that is, most don't. But it is a sort of recurring theme and a possibility. Google hasn't admitted that they use this, but it does explain what happens when, let's say, if you exploit a minority of ranking factors. So, for instance, overuse of exact match phrase. If you exploit it, meaning there's more of that than anything else, and you've been getting some benefit from having that, like it's on your page, it's in your internal anchor text. It's the external anchor text. You've got it in your headers. You've got it everywhere. And pretty much it's like a one-trick pony. Then Google, after you hit a certain point, it's like it acts like a tripwire. If you hit that point, Google will take back all the benefit of having any of that factor on your page, and they mathematically ignore it. Now, the third one, and this is the first time, but we have growing data, and it's probably been creeping up for quite some time. We have growing data that topical relevancy has some influence on the ability of a page to make it over the serving threshold. You can get it crawled, you can get it, quote, indexed in Search Console, which means they know it exists, and they've crawled it, and they've indexed it. But the ability of that page to get a keyword assigned is gone because it's not showing up for anything. So if the knobs to getting assigned a keyword are tightening, then the ability to mathematically understand topical relevance and to give it a score is only going to get more essential to being able to compete in the SERPs. So if you haven't gotten a license to Quora and you are a professional SEO, that's the on-page measurement tool by Ted Kubaitis. Get it now before the next upgrade so you can get the best price. It's a bit.ly link, that little short links, I'll put it in there, but it's bit.ly/ and then confessions Quora, all one word. Now, if you can't get your new content assigned a keyword and served because of topical confusion, and Google is behaving with more sensitivity to that introduction of topical confusion, that's going to restrict the ability of businesses to make money attracting people who don't know who they are, but are seeking what they do. And lest you think, oh, that doesn't matter, I'm not publishing new content, I already rank for it. Well, this applies to existing content as well. Now, these knobs clearly are changing. And if you're seeing content just drop out of being served, there are, like I said, currently 3 reasons that I can think of that don't include activity of others, right? But I think being able to tell the difference as to which one it is why I think there's going to be more demand for forensic SEO as we move forward. Now, I'd like to hear from you, or if you're seeing this on your site or your client sites, be sure to reach out on the Facebook page for American Way Media or in LinkedIn. Next week, I'm going to share what I think is causing the latest high volatility in the search results, like where it's coming from. I'll give you a clue. The server logs have been looking like an active crime scene. All right. Well, that'll do it for today. Check out Crawl or No Crawl reports for new findings on the ongoing indexation research. Thank you to the Confession supporters. Thank you for being a listener. Please come back and bring a friend. And if you like this type of SEO content and stories, there are 2 things you can do to support this work. Become a monthly sponsor for less than that cup of Starbucks coffee with the extra shots, or leave a review on Spotify, Amazon Alexa, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to Confessions. Because if you can't do one, please do the other. And it's been my pleasure to be with you today, and I'll see you in the SERPs.